Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this first meeting of the current planning committee on Thursday, April the 15th. My name's Caleb Tomlinson. I'm the councillor for Bamber West, and I'm also the chair of this committee. And I would like to warmly welcome all the new members of the planning committee this evening. I think there's only 3 of us left from the original one. All right, if you're attending the meeting because you're a member of the public and you wish to speak, please note you have 4 minutes and you will be timed. And when your time is up, I will inform you of such and you will need to wind up. I'll start with some housekeeping. Could you please put your mobile phones on silent? The toilets are in the foyer if you need them. And we're not anticipating a fire drill this evening. So if the alarm goes off, the fire exits are behind you and we all meet on the grassy area on West Paddock. Voting this evening will be undertaken, I hope, by the electronic. The electronic system is working. Okay. I will now ask everyone to introduce themselves, starting with the young lady to my left.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Tasneem Safdar. I'm the Legal Services Team Leader and will be assisting the committee tonight. Thank you.
Ben Story, Democratic Services Officer.
Good evening. Kath Unsworth, Councillor for Broadfield Ward.
Good evening. Matthew Farnworth, Councillor for Seven Stars Ward.
Good evening, Councillor Phil Smith, representing New Longton and Hutton East.
Good evening, Councillor Angela Turner. I'm representing Broad Oak Ward in Pemberton.
Good evening, Councillor Colin Sharples, member for Earnshaw Bridge, and this evening I'm substituting for Councillor Will Adams.
Good evening, Councillor Damien Brotherton, Walton Liddell West, substituting for Councillor Peter Molyneux.
Good evening, Hayden Williams, Councillor for Leyland Central.
Good evening, Councillor Mary Green, Councillor for Moss Side and Midge Hall.
Good evening, Councillor Elaine Stringfellow for Lostock Hall and also Vice Chair.
Good evening, Janice Crook, Planning Officer.
Good evening, Chris Sowerby, Development Planning Team Leader.
Good evening, Elizabeth Hindle, Head of Planning Enforcement.
Okay, thanks everyone. That takes into consideration item 2 as well. Apologies. So we'll move on to item number 3. Do we have any declarations of interest this evening? No. Okay. Item number 4, the minutes of the meeting held on the 27th of April 2023. Because it was streamed live on YouTube, all members can vote. I agree with them. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Smith, thank you very much. Now we need to go to the electronic vote on these. Yes, Councillor Smith.
Yeah,
go on.
Just mention something on the minutes themselves, just regard to clarification, and that's agenda item 122 on page 7, and it's when it says resolved. I've not got a real issue with it, but I'm just, it says that the members are minded to approve the application with the decision being delegated to the head of planning and enforcement in consultation with the chair and vice chair of the planning committee upon the successful completion of a public consultation period. Has that happened, or there was a consultation period before it started and before it came to planning, but looks as though there's another consultation period after planning. I'm not 100% sure, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah, there was a couple of days left after that last planning committee to complete, so that's happened. It was just to finalise that second consultation period, which was halfway through, if you like.
So for the benefit of the committee then, was that successful?
Yeah, there was no further comments raised, so it
okay,
completed.
Thank you.
Okay, are you happy to second?
Quite happy to second that, Chair. Yeah,
thanks, Councillor Smith. Okay, let's go to the electronic vote on that, please.
Thank you, Chair. So those minutes are approved.
All right, thanks for that. And item number 5, Lizzie, do we have any appeals to?
No, Chair. Sorry, no, Chair.
This is going swimmingly. Okay, item number 6, land west of Lancashire Business Park, Centurion Way, Farrington. Janice is going to present this as one item. Then we're going to ask objectors to come up and speak, any registered members not on committee to speak, and the agent, and then she's going to present item 7. So these are 2 separate items. Okay, thanks, Janice.
Thank you, Chair. Just waiting for this to catch up with itself. There we go. Thanks, Chris. Thank you. So, at the 9th of February Planning Committee, the decision was deferred for these 2 applications for the phase 2 of the development of the employment site allocated under Local Plan Policy E2, Site F, known as land to west of Lancashire Business Park. The applications were deferred due to issues raised by members of the public to the phase 1 development, which is currently under construction, and its landscaping. So these applications were then due to be considered at the 9th of March meeting, but the applicant requested that they be withdrawn from that meeting for a number of reasons, as reported in the addendum to the actual committee reports. So also picking up from comments made at the deferred meeting, I will present both these applications together as they're linked. By way of background, outline planning permission was granted in May 2021 for up to 56,904 square metres of light industrial, general industrial, storage and distribution and ancillary office floor space, together with the means of access. This was followed by the reserved matters approval in April 2022 for phase 1, a single building with ancillary office space. So these 2 applications are for phase 2 of the development, and the lilac shaded area on the plan there shows the location within the bigger site, the larger site. So you'll see the proposed units are in a very different area of the site from the phase 1 building. So item 6 is the reserved matters application for 2 buildings with ancillary office space and associated works. This application also proposes updates to the landscaping approved for the wider site under the phase 1 permission, which I will come to later in this presentation. So this is the site layout plan and shows the location of the 2 units, and the blue area relates to the full planning application for Unit 4. So again, this is the location of Unit 4. The reason this is a separate full application is because the floor space permitted under the outline approval has been reached by the combination of phase 1 development together with the 2 units proposed by the reserved matters for phase 2. So this application seeks full planning permission for a single building of 3,065 square metres, again with ancillary office space. So Unit 2 will measure 57.5 metres by 52.5 metres with a double pitch roof over with a ridge height of 12.8 metres and an eaves height of 11.5. To the front elevation facing the access road will be a 2-storey scale glazed office accommodation. No windows are proposed in the rear elevation. Unit 3 will measure 79.5 metres by 48.5, again with a double pitch roof over with a ridge height of 12.8 metres and eaves height of 11.5. And again, it will have a 2-storey scale glazed office accommodation facing the access road with no windows in the rear elevation. And then Unit 4 will measure 65.5 metres by 44 metres. And again, double pitch roof, eaves height of 11.5, ridge height of 12.8, and a 2-storey scale glazed office accommodation to the front elevation facing the access road, with no windows in the rear elevation. Now, all units will be finished in vertical profile cladding in anthracite and Merlin grey, and the roof will be in goosewing grey. Sorry, it's not a very clear image, that. So this is an artist's impression to show the waste technology plant, the phase 1 development, which is under construction, and the proposals for phase 2 to give an idea of how they will appear together. Access to the site was approved at the outline stage and is off Centurion Way via a roundabout junction. And this is a view looking to the site access from Centurion Way. So this slide shows the 3 units with the access road, which runs along the northern boundary of the site. Unit 2 has its service yard to the western side. Unit 3 has its to the north, between the building and the access road. And Unit 4 has its service yard to the east. You can also see the proposed parking areas, which include disability spaces and electric vehicle charging points. So County Highways have no objection and consider the level of parking is acceptable, but require a condition to ensure secured, covered cycle storage is also provided. So this is an image of the proposed units in relation to the service yard access and the residential estate to the left. The recently constructed residential development off Grasmere Avenue lies to the south of the proposed units. Unit 2 lies to the northwest of the residential properties. The rear of Unit 3 is opposite the side elevations of dwellings. Unit 4 is largely separated from the residential site by public open space, which was required as part of that residential development, and an existing pond. So landscaping is to be enhanced within the application site along the boundary with the residential site. And CADIC, the developers, following discussions with residents and council officers, have confirmed that the planting would be brought forward to this current planting season so it can help screen the units during construction. And it's noticed that some of this planting has now been carried out. Additionally, landscape planting within the residential development has now been carried out by McDermott Homes. So the residential properties largely have their side elevations facing towards the common boundary, although the plots edged red have the main front elevations facing towards the site. You can just see those down here. So those are facing more towards the public open space, and there's a good spatial separation distance between them and the site. Now the plot edged in blue was plot 81. It does have windows facing the rear of Unit 4. And you just see plot 81 there. So this photograph shows the new properties with the side elevations facing the site. And these properties are the ones that face the site but further towards the east and face the public open space. So this is an image of plot 81, which is 2 ground floor and 1 first floor habitable room windows facing the rear of Unit 4. So this cross-section provided by the applicant shows the property in relation to Unit 4. There is a 54.5 metre separation distance and landscaping between. The spatial separation distance is considered entirely acceptable, And the image also shows the proposed landscaping and the stages of growth by year and the ground levels, with the Unit 4 set at a lower ground level than the dwelling. Additionally, landscape planting within the Grasmere Avenue development, which will also help screen the development, has recently been carried out. In terms of overlooking, there are no windows in the rear elevations of the units. In terms of loss of light and overshadowing, the proposed units lie to the north of the residential properties, so this will not be an issue. Additionally, a daylight and sunlight assessment has been submitted, which follows the Building Research Establishment's guidance and demonstrates that the proposal will not impact on the daylight received to this or any other surrounding properties. And this is reported at para 9.12 of the item 7 report. So, as per the reserve matters for phase 1 development, impacts to the reception of digital terrestrial television, FM, DAB and digital satellite television services have been assessed, with a submitted report recommending a number of mitigation measures, and this is conditioned. The mitigation scheme is up and running for the phase 1 development, and the details are reported at section 10.17 of the Reserve Matters report at item 6. And each property will receive a bespoke mitigation depending on that property's particular issues. Residents have raised the impact on mobile phone signals also as an issue and considered the survey needs to be expanded to include mobile cell coverage. CADIC therefore commissioned a survey and provide details and advice on their website to assist residents. And if you've not had a viewing of that website, it's farringtonconstruction.co.uk. So there's also potential for noise disturbance due to the service yard to Unit 2 being to the west of the building. However, this is mitigated by a 4 metre high acoustic fence to the southwestern corner, which I've tried to denote there, and you can just see it in this bit here. Condition 3 has been included to ensure the development is carried out in accordance with the submitted noise impact assessment and the mitigation measures within that document. Now, Environmental Health have no objections. They've reviewed the report and have no objections. So for Unit 4, the service areas to the east of the building and noise and disturbance to residential properties is to be mitigated with the inclusion of a 6 metre high acoustic fence to the boundary. And again, that's shown, the arrows just pointing to it. It's along there. Again, Environmental Health have no objections to this. In terms of lighting, these images show the extent of the lighting around the units. There will be some light overspill into the public open space from the lighting to the service yard of Unit 4, but the lighting plan demonstrates it does not extend to the dwellings themselves. An updated external lighting strategy was submitted as initially Greater Manchester Ecology Unit, our advisors in matters of ecology, did have some concerns and required that a contour plan to show the extent of light spillage to the boundary area. But GMEU have now confirmed the updated plan is acceptable. So the Reserve Matters application also proposes some changes to the landscaping scheme approved for the whole site as part of the Phase 1 permission and includes the land surrounding the Phase 2 development. The updated landscaping plans include 13 species more in the proposed tree planting and larger evergreen tree species. To accommodate screening, some of the trees will be relocated or omitted to allow appropriate space between the trees. So the revised landscaping and ecological enhancements will still be managed going forward as detailed within the Landscape and Ecology Management Plan by Urban Green dated August 2021, and that was required under condition 3 of the phase 1 reserve matters approval. So the proposed amendments are considered a betterment of the landscaping, and Greater Manchester Ecology Unit have no objections. Since the deferral, the applicant confirmed the landscape programme will be brought forward to this current planting season to help screen the development, and this has now been carried out. Additionally, as previously mentioned, the landscaping for the residential development has also been carried out by McDermott Homes. Excuse me. So these are just a couple of photographs. One was taken in the winter, and the second, the current view looking across the development site towards the Grasmere Avenue development. So you can just about make out the landscaping along the boundary, which will grow and mature in time. So it's officers' view that both the reserve matters and full applications are in accordance with the relevant policies both nationally and locally, and therefore the applications are both recommended for approval, subject to the imposition of conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks for your detailed presentation, Janice. That was obviously item 6 and 7 together. Okay, but we're going to have 2 debates and 2 votes on one on item 6, one on item 7. Before that, obviously, we have members of the public wishing to speak in objection to the application. So we have Mr. Adam Cooper. If you come to the microphone, Adam, press speak, and because you're speaking on both of the applications at once, you actually have 8 minutes. If you can fill that, you'll be a better man than me. Okay?
It's meant to have caught me unawares, so I've got both prepared. So thank you, Chair and members of the committee. I'm a resident of Grasmere Avenue, and my property is mentioned specifically in the residential amenity section 9.9.4 of item 7. I'm plot 81 as shown on the in the presentation. My concerns relate specifically to the proposed unit 4 in item 7. However, the mitigation is covered in item 6. I bought my property with prior knowledge of the relationship between my development and this land, and proceeded on the basis that due to the sequential nature of the respective applications, that any development here will be completed sympathetically. It appears that few of my neighbours had prior knowledge of this, and this should be of some concern to someone. My representation today is purely regards to the relationship of this development to my property, and doesn't represent the views of any of my neighbours or residents affected by the phase 1 development. I'm generally supportive of the developments in some form on this site, only because this is what I expected when I moved here. Throughout this process, it appears there's been a running theme to the responses to my queries during the consultation and application process that the properties on Grasmere Avenue have been built with blank elevations facing the proposed employment land. I've raised with CADIC in the pre-consultation and via the South Ribble Planning Portal that this was not the case, and that my property has 3 windows in 2 habitable rooms directly facing the proposed development. I'd like to thank the Planning Officer for acknowledging this error on the 14th of February 2023, and I'm happy to see this information has been corrected in the most recent report. The officer report states that the lounge windows can be considered secondary windows, which is probably reasonable when considering daylight. However, due to the shape and orientation of this room, there are few ways to use that room without looking directly at the back of Unit 4. On this basis, I feel they should not be considered secondary windows when considering residential amenity. I'd like to pose a question, has your understanding been that the properties on Grasmere Avenue have been built with blank elevations facing the proposed employment land? The indicative master plan uploaded in January 2021 to the outline application showed 2 3-bed semis with blank elevations in the location of my detached homes with the windows facing the site. And if the information about my property was accurate in previous reports, the same decisions have been made. I'm not aware of any residential amenity impact assessments being conducted from the vantage point of my side of the development or relevant to my property. I've raised this question with the planning officer, but I'm yet to receive a response. Perspective is key here. The Unit 4 site section specifically showing my property is an accurate 2D representation of the site, but does not show the reality of living in my property. At any given point in my lounge, you can see a maximum of 2 trees of the 4 on the from the McDermott side of the plan, and a maximum of 4 of the newly planted trees on this development. I'm concerned as, from the viewpoint of my property, Unit 1 looks in keeping with the rest of the industrial estate. However, a short drive to Croston Road really highlights how out of place this building is. My fear is that whilst it is smaller, Unit 4 will be inescapably dominant due to the size and proximity to my home, and the 2 lounge windows and my daughter's bedroom directly facing it. I support the reorientation of Unit 3 and the bringing forward of the landscaping works, and have opportunity to speak to the applicant's agent who has talked me through the proposed plans. The planting completed so far looks like it will fail to provide any screening, and I'm unsure whether the proposed landscaping work will provide an appropriate level of screening, especially if the locations aren't selected relative to how my habitable rooms are used. The 3D artist impressions I have seen from an overhead view have included a tree line 5 or 6 deep, whereas the planting plans have seen a 3 deep at most. And it's been indicated to me by the agent that should the landscaping works be insufficient, there'll be more work done to provide appropriate screening. Due to perspective, I think 6 metre specimens will likely screen around 8 metres of the building. With ideal conditions, they might grow to provide full screening within 5 to 10 years. However, as these aren't native specimens, they may take longer. In reality, despite checking all the plans I can find, I have no idea whether the landscaping plans will be sufficient to provide appropriate screening. Living on the Grasmere estate, I have first-hand experience of seeing a developer not completing the proposed landscaping plans. I know this has only just been done, and so far they've failed to thrive. My 2 requests should this application be approved, is that the landscaping plans should be considered fully, acknowledge that they're to provide an appropriate level of screening and should be maintained, ensure that sufficient conditions and controls are in place to make sure that the planting schedule should be considered a minimum initial standard, and should any of the specimens fail to thrive, or are there any gaps that they are filled and replaced as appropriate. My second request is more relevant to the next application, is to ask yourselves whether the correct decision has been made with the right information available to you. I noted the mismatch between what you expected and what was delivered so far when discussing the Unit 1 on the 9th of February, irrespective of the Builders Measured Report commissioned. The Builders Measured Report commissioned. Now that the record has been corrected regarding my property, is it appropriate for a 12-metre high building to be built 54 metres away from a building with windows and habitable rooms facing it? So that was what I prepared regarding item 6. Going straight on to item 7. Being an element of repetition here, so you'll have to bear with me so I don't put you through it again. So it has been difficult to prepare for this item because my feelings towards this application could be affected by the outcomes of the previous application, and it's difficult to separate them in relation to my home. Despite the information about this development being in the public domain in the form of local plans, etc., for some time, it's my belief that it was not common knowledge amongst the residents of Grasmere Avenue and that contrary information being given from another source, and this should be concerning. As you're aware, I'm a resident of Grasmere Avenue. I've covered that. So I'm concerned about the size and proximity of Unit 4 to the north elevation of my property, which has 2 windows in the lounge and 1 in my daughter's bedroom. There's no other way of using my lounge without looking directly at it. And I think the assertion that the windows in those rooms to be considered secondary should be incorrect. My wish is not to preserve a view, as it's not a great view as it stands. My fear, though, is that while smaller than Unit 1, the proximity to these windows, this building will be inescapably dominant and risks having a detrimental impact on the health and well-being of my family, and the proposed landscaping works may not be sufficient to provide appropriate screening. That all pretty much repeats it. So I'm just going to wrap up there if that's okay. And like you said, I think 8 minutes was
Yeah, you did very well. All right, Adam, thank you very much for your presentation. Yeah, thanks for that. I'm sorry to put you on back foot.
No, that's
you had
fine.
8 minutes. Perhaps I should have come and spoke to you earlier.
It's fine.
Okay, thanks very much. Now we have a David Pendlebury with us this evening. And I've only got you down to speak against item 6, is that correct? But you're also going to speak on behalf of Mr. Michael Scott, who's unwell this evening. And he's down to speak on both applications. So he's got 8, you've got 4, you've got 12 minutes. I mean, good luck with that one. Okay, if you'd like to start, David, thank you.
I'm David Pendlebury. I'm a resident on Meadowland Close and I wish to object. My first point is regarding the size. This development is nearly 13 metres high and the nearest residential property is not 54 metres away. It's more closer to 30 metres. This can be verified using Google Earth. To put this into context, the Phase 1 building is 60 metres away, twice the distance, but the Phase 2 building are still more than 70% of the height of Phase 1. I'm sure you've seen the images of how overbearing the Phase 1 building is. Phase 2 will be even worse, as it's not much shorter, but it's significantly close to the residents of Grasmere Avenue. South Ribble Local Policy G17 states the proposal does not have a detrimental impact on the neighbouring buildings or on the street scene by virtue of its height, scale or proximity and should not have an overbearing effect. This development is not tucked away. There's no large trees or bunds to hide it. What's being asked here is for 3 warehouses to be built directly across the street from someone's house, someone's back garden and someone's home. The second point, whilst this development is small in comparison to Phase 1, it's still substantial and will generate additional traffic. Cardiff already submitted a transport statement at the outline stage. However, due to the fact this was done 2.5 years ago, with data that is over 4 years old, and the fact the development significantly changed, this should be reconsidered now. I've read the transport statement. It's a complete shambles. It's 750 pages long, mostly filled with pages and pages of modelling data. These are some of the highlights. Not once does it mention in a summary, conclusion, introduction or the existing conditions that many of the roads that this development will feed into are running way above capacity before the development commenced. However, this information is buried in the data. Not once does it mention in a summary, conclusion, introduction or the existing conditions that certain junctions have delay times in excess of 9 minutes due to the amount of current congestion and will increase to 11 minutes when the development is completed. However, this information is buried in the data. Croft, who created the transport statement, were also very clever how they presented their findings. Multiple times they used the statement, minimal increase in the degree of saturation. What they failed to tell you is the roads are already saturated. When a road is full, it's very hard to increase the number of cars on it. The word congestion only appears 3 times in the whole 750 pages, and when it is used, it's only to quote National Planning Policy Framework wording. Finally, no HGV movements were used in the modelling or the assessment. Just want to repeat that, no HGVs. The modelling of traffic flows was based on 0 heavy vehicles in the traffic mix. Now, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that Amazon, Ashcrofts, Clive, Lancashire Waste Park, and more questionable Leyland trucks are all present on the current industrial estate, and all of them either use or make HGVs. This begs the question, where on earth did Croft get their data? Is what they presented at all a reflection on reality? Why is there no mention of the points made previously, and why were these hidden in the 750 pages of the document? What is really worrying is Lancashire County Council Highways have not objected to this, so this begs the question, who has actually read this transport statement? My final point, South Ribble has a great honour of having the highest number of AQMAs in the whole of Lancashire. 3 of these are within 2 miles of this development, and the nearest is only half a mile away. Quote the South Ribble's Air Quality Management Plan. Emissions from HGVs are disproportionately higher and contribute significant proportions to total emissions. Therefore, redirecting HGVs away from areas of poor air quality will help to reduce the harmful effects. Now, here lies the problem. This development will cause a significant increase in freight traffic to the AQMA on Golden Hill Lane and Turpin Green Lane, due mainly to the fact that the A582 and the Junction 29 access route is so heavily congested, HGVs are preferentially going to Junction 28. Additionally, this polluting freight traffic will originate and end literally metres away from people's homes. I urge you to refuse this application on the grounds that it is against Planning Policy G17. It will cause even more pollution, and the fact that the transport statement is not only wrong, but it can be deemed to be extremely misleading. A councillor on this committee previously stated something has seriously gone wrong with this development. Your decisions are based on what is presented in front of you. However, when that information is skewed, hidden, or the checks and balances have been missed, sometimes the developer gets exactly what they want at the detriment to others. Therefore, I also ask you to consider looking at the legality of previous permissions granted for this development due to the misleading nature of the transport statement and the visual assessments. Thank you. That's my statement. Do you want to move on to Michael Scott?
Yeah, I'll just pause for a minute because you overran by a minute. So Michael's only got 7,
okay.
not 8. And can I just remind committee that the applications this evening are absolutely nothing to do with phase 1. This is phase 2. All right, so all comments made about phase 1, I would advise you to ignore them because they're nothing to do with this current application in front of us. I'll bring my local legal services team leader in to correct me if I'm wrong.
Thank you, Chair. That's absolutely perfect.
Oh.
I just wanted to say, obviously, and those comments can't be taken into account for any material considerations. So just wanted to add, obviously, what in terms of what Chair's just said.
Okay, David, so you now have 7 minutes to present on behalf of Michael Scott.
Okay. So we are here this evening to support fellow residents, and this will be affected by this development. Carrick and the Planning Committee should by now be fully aware of why the Farrington Moss Farrington community are against further development. Residents who have been impacted by phase 1 will like to get the Planning Committee to know what it's like to live with this. We have lost our amenity. It's changed the street scene. It is overbearing and imposing. Our daily lives have been impacted by noise, dirt, dust. During darker nights, have floodlights direct onto our property. Overnight works being carried out, disturbing sleep. Damage to properties along the riverbank following compaction works. Since January 23, we have lost our mobile phone signal, and no one will take ownership of this, leaving us in a vulnerable position. Carrick will tell you that they are a family-run business who want to be good neighbours, but once they have got what they want, they are no longer true to their word. Whilst pictures and slides shown you see tonight look amazing, no one tells you that the reduction in height or a few extra trees are really worth it, as the land they build upon is raised to level the ground instead of being dug out to level it. The only reason behind this must be a cheaper option, but a high cost to those blighted by the construction. Committee, please ensure you get this right this time and protect your residents. Some very big lessons should have been learnt from the major mistakes you made with phase 1. And that was made on behalf of Michael Scott.
Okay, thanks, David. I don't have any supporters for this application. And so I don't have the ward members. Well, they didn't register to speak in time, but I do have Councillor James Flannery with us this evening, who is the portfolio holder.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just thought it was fairly relevant and important after a difficult week of reading the information about this and seeing the correspondence about this. But I just want to make a couple of things fairly clear to everyone in the room. It's the first time I'm addressing committee as not a committee member. So you've got a tough job to do. I appreciate and respect that. Just a little message to the residents, if you don't mind me just clarifying one thing. I've been a councillor, this is my 5th year. Not one councillor I know, or whatever party, ever does anything to the detriment of a resident. Not one, I've never seen it, never heard it. And I think I recognise a number of members of the public here tonight. And I did go to a meeting with them prior to the election, and I think I reiterated that point. So please understand that officers have a job to do, and they are guided by the NPPF Elected members have a job to do in terms of what they do, in terms of the decision of the committee. And they've got to get a balance, which is very, very difficult, particularly in a case like this. But notwithstanding that, I would just like to recognise Adam's and David's contribution tonight, because you both spoke very well and represented your community excellently. When you were talking, I made some note that it was honest and fair appraisal. You recognised that you'd been in touch with people and they've spoke back to you in terms of information. But there was a word which was mentioned which I really liked, and it's perspective. And I think perspective is really important, because I've said this previously, the balance between planning, development, and how people live in their houses is always, always difficult, particularly on a site like this, because we know it was designated for that type of land to be built in terms of employment, but we also know there was adjacencies in terms of where people live. But we've said it lots and lots of times, and we've listened, and we've tried to listen and tried to help. But when Lancashire County Council don't comment on the transport issues, and David's took the time to read a 758-page report, and he was citing things in there which make you question whether someone has read it, and no comments. But I can assure you, David, it's not the first time we come in here and members on the committee are not armed with Lancashire County Council's commenting on highways. It's a common habit which seems to happen from Lancashire County. So whoever is your Lancashire County representative, please pick it up with them, because it doesn't feel right. It never feels right. But coming back to the hub event, I don't want to take too much of your time up, committee. When you look at this application, the officers have done all they can do. But the reality is, it is affecting people's lives. And, you know, that's what we get elected for. We get elected to do what we can for our residents. And I know the policy is the policy, but it comes from a national government, which lots of times we have it all the time. There's listening not getting done nationally, but locally, I can assure you there is people listening, and these councillors in here do listen. So I don't want to take too much of anyone's time up, but the concerns which I've heard prior to this, the emails and correspondence I've seen, and please just do me a favour going forward on this, for anyone who wants to engage with us, please don't come from an accusatory point of view. I can assure you, no one receives that well, or nor is it accurate. People are fair-minded. But in this instance, this just seems to be too much of an issue for people. These people are being as fair as they can. It's affecting their life. As soon as I walked into the foyer, I recognised the faces again and again and again, and they keep coming back and trying to say it's affecting us. So I think you've got to hear them. And as a cabinet member with an objective position here tonight with no influence on your committee, I would support refusal tonight, because I think these residents appear to have had enough. And whilst I know there's policy to be complied with, I think we've got to sometimes have a conviction, and that conviction for me means let's back the residents on this and refuse. Thank you.
As eloquent as always, Councillor Flannery. And new members, you will get used to this time and time again, that our statutory consultee, Lancashire Highways, have no comment to make. You will get used to it, I assure you. Councillor Williams.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, we have the agent. Sorry, I have the agent. He's on Teams. So if the agent, Mr. Mike Saunders, out there in the land of Teams, wants to join and have 4 minutes to address the committee.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can all hear you. Thank you.
Like the previous speakers, I was a bit caught out by representations as well on either application. I'm wondering, do I just have the same 8-minute period to cover both applications? I'll just get it done. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. These applications in front of members tonight relate solely to phase 2 and should be determined fully recognising this, which has been mentioned previously this evening. The principles being widely scrutinised and confirmed through the adoption in the local plan of the site allocation and receipt of outline consent. This reserve matters planning application is wholly within the parameters set, and the outline consent set a height parameter between 15 and 25 metres, in which this application is well below a maximum 12.8 metre ridge height. Several key details have already been agreed under the outline consent and first reserve matters approvals, and a number of conditions have been discharged relating to matters such as drainage, access, highways, landscape, arboriculture and ecology. Phase 2 will bring significant economic benefits to South Ribble, which are tangible, and deliver the completion of a large ecological park and new cycle link for wider community use. Following February's deferral, Carrick have submitted further information to the council and have had rounds of discussions with residents at Grasmere Avenue, given their direct proximity to the Phase 2 site. These discussions provide residents with clarity on landscaping, height of the buildings and any impacts on residential amenity, offering information as best we could. The adjacent site was an enabling development to assist in the delivery of this employment site, which must be recognised. This relationship was a significant consideration in the development of the design and the layout of the houses, the position of gable ends in general, and only one case which we've heard this evening is the secondary windows of a plot with an outlook onto the employment site. The heights of the proposed units are well below the parameters. A site section is being produced, which Janice Crook provided earlier on, showing separation distances between the units and the closest residential receptor on Grasmere Avenue, which is in excess of the requirement offered to us as a guideline for development, and due to their location will not result in overshadowing. Furthermore, the units, contrary to some reports earlier, will sit on a lower level to the properties, reducing the perceived scale, which will be well screened by a landscape buffer, bettered over time with no office windows overlooking Grasmere Avenue. An updated lighting plan shows that very minimal light spillage will occur on the boundary of the site, given lighting is predominantly to the front of the units, with only lighting to the rear being for security, which will be low intensity and only activated by movement. As a direct result of discussions with Grasmere Avenue residents and comments made, Carrick agreed that the landscape programme be brought forward and carried out, and as Janice Crook showed earlier on, has already been put in within this planting season. This will ensure the best possible chance of success and secured as early as possible to develop alongside the construction phase when that will be. The landscaping has also been amended to include further evergreen trees to ensure the landscaping screening can be retained year-round. This landscaping will sit alongside the approved extensive ecology park, which will provide significant biodiversity enhancement, as well as open recreational space for residents. The approval of Phase 2 will allow the area to be completed and the Farrington Loop route re-established and the benefits to nearby residents realised. Moving on to the detailed planning application, the proposed building is of the same scale and character as those subject to the reserve matters, which has required additional technical assessments due to the proposals in effect constituting new floor space. Further highways work was carried out, which assessed the additional floor space beyond that agreed in the outline consent, and this concluded that the trip generation from the unit in accumulation with the reserve matters application would only lead to a marginal increase in trip movements, which can be appropriately accommodated. Noise will be effectively managed through an acoustic barrier, which ensures noise breakout is limited. The HO officer agreed with the proposals will not have any negative impacts on nearby residents. The submitted lighting scheme limits the level of light spill again, and the closest proximity of residents on Grasmere Avenue on the new estate roads are approximately 40 to 55 metres from the site boundary, with intervening landscaped areas. The submitted site section clearly shows this relationship, and the unit will not be overbearing. The unit lies to the north of residential properties, with the sun travelling from east to west, and therefore buildings will not be cause of overshadowing. An additional drainage work has been carried out to ensure the additional floor space can be effectively integrated into the previously agreed drainage strategy. A condition was attached to the application securing these details. It's key to reiterate that landscaping has again been a focal point of discussions following the deferral. Carrick have agreed to bring forward planting to effectively screen this unit as early as possible and will plug identified gaps once landscaping has been developed out. Again, all technical consideration has been addressed with no outstanding objections from consultees, which clearly indicates acceptability of proposals. The proposals, while subject to individual application, in composition represent a high quality and sustainable development, which responds to the site's adopted planning status, previous planning approvals, and its context. The development delivers a significant range of economic, environmental, and social gains and completes the development of this important employment allocation. As we previously noted, interest from local occupiers to these units has been high, and the offer of smaller units will effectively cater for a wide range of business types. In conclusion, we respectfully request that members follow the clear and robust officer recommendation and approve this application. Thanks again for your time and your attention this evening.
Okay, thanks for your presentation, Mark. Right, I am going to open this up to committee now, and I have Councillor William. Don't forget, this is just on item 6, yeah? We're going to vote, debate and vote on item 6 and then do the same on item 7. I think that's for legal purposes. I've got Councillor Hayden Williams.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good evening, everyone. I'm new to the planning committee, as you may know, but I've lurked at the back with plenty of planning applications, especially in the past, and listened to that. I'm newly elected councillor, and one of our jobs is listen to residents and also listen to developers as well, and listen and try and get that balance between what developers want and what the public want. Now, obviously, there are points where those conflict, and obviously our decisions that we have to make here are extremely difficult. You know, whether something adversely affects a resident, when it can be mitigated. You know, it's one of these things. Some of these things we have to look at things that we either like or don't like. Now, looking at this in particular, obviously we're looking at units 2 and 3 at the minute. Unit 4 is item 7. So units 2 and 3, but I think it's going to be very similar for unit 4. I don't think the comments that I make are going to be vastly different. On this other one. There's a balance to be struck, as I said. There's a balance to be struck with this, and looking at the balance of this. I've looked at some of the plans of some of the houses. Now, you know, plot 81 and some of the houses. Some of the houses here on that estate are about 7 metres high up to the eaves. Now, these buildings are, you know, the 12 metres high, so they're nearly 50% higher than the actual building itself. And these buildings effectively overshadow houses by miles. You know, even not from windows. As soon as you open the door, it's not just looking out of a window losing amenity. It's losing what you've got in front of you. I listened very specifically as well to traffic. Obviously, looking at the access to this site, the only access is from Centurion Way. Now, completely disregard phase 1, because that's a different thing that comes in from the other side of Centurion Way, from Farrington Way. The only way that I can see that this can go in there is via Centurion Way. I think I'm right in saying. Am I right in saying? I think, well, by the look of it. And obviously, I've got to think of the traffic and the residential amenity to not just the residents of Grasmere Avenue, but people down Stanleyfield Lane as well in the Farrington area, and traffic coming down. You know, effectively the only routes that can get there. So it either comes from Wheelton Lane, straight through the centre of Leyland, or it comes from down Centurion Way past a lot of houses in Farrington. And like you say, it's 4-year-old data. You know, like you said, there's been no. I take it as read that there's been no HGV data put into this. And then we also got the radio waves issue as well. TV and DAB signal is in the report as it has to be mitigated. Mobile signal is still a radio signal, and I've no idea why. You can do Wi-Fi calling. You can do Wi-Fi calling, yeah, but that's if you've got a broadband router. If you haven't got a broadband router and you haven't got a landline, how are you supposed to dial 999 in an emergency? That is a significant amenity loss for certain people that we can't protect. So, you know, I'm trying to be brief here, and you know, I'd like the privilege of my first duty to be as a councillor to protect residents against overreaching development. And for me, this is an overreach. So I would propose that we actually refuse this application.
You're very popular this evening, Councillor Williams, as a first timer. So you're proposing an amendment to the proposal.
I'm proposing an amendment to the proposal that we actually refuse the application. Granted, I know we're speaking on on effectively units 2 and 3, but everything I say would be repeated for unit 4 as well. So I would propose refusal on both items.
Councillor Sharples, did you indicate?
I don't need to add anything to what Ed's already said, except to say that I'd like to second that amendment, please.
Councillor Phil Smith.
Yeah, just briefly, Chair. We need to be very, very clear on the grounds for refusal. I haven't heard any grounds for refusal yet. I've heard lots of words, and we can all come out with that, and we're all concerned about residents. But we actually need specific grounds within the plan to refuse it. And I think before members start debating any other options that there are to us, we need to know the detail of those grounds. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Williams, would you like to give us your reasons for?
I've got the local plan in front of me here. Policy G17. Paragraph A states the proposal does not have a detrimental effect on existing building, neighbourhood buildings, or on the street scene by virtue of its design, height, scale, orientation, blah, blah, blah. Furthermore, the development should not have harm to neighbouring property by leading to undue overlooking, overshadowing, or overbearing. In my view, I would hope that other members of the committee would support me, the size of it is overbearing. I don't think anybody is against the principle of development here, but the development has to be correct. In this case, I don't think it's correct. I can only go whatever's in front of me. If another application came in front, then that may probably change my mind. But I have to bear in mind what is in front of me. And what is in front of me, for me, is not acceptable.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Williams. Councillor Bretherton, then Councillor Mrs Green.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. With regards to what my fellow councillor was saying, can we have a legal opinion, please, on the G17 from one of the officers? Thank you.
I'm sorry, I missed that. I'm a bit mutton.
Oh, sorry. Bearing in mind what was just said from the previous speaker, can we have a legal opinion from our officers about the policy G17?
Yeah, certainly. Lizzie or Janice, I presume it's Lizzie, or I think Taz might want to jump in here. She wants to steal your limelight, Lizzie.
I don't. Through you, Chair, I think because it's a policy consideration, I think Lizzie would be more appropriate to actually answer this one.
Liz?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah. To clarify, officers are satisfied that the development meets the local and national planning policy guidance. We have looked through the application and dealt with it as well as we can. The principle of development is already established. I'd also like to direct members to paragraph 11 of NPPF, which states that local planning authorities should approve development which accords with an up-to-date plan without delay. And as such, we recommend approval subject to conditions.
Okay, Councillor Bretherton, are you happy with that statement?
Yes, thank you.
However, I have been sat on this committee and I have chaired this committee when we have voted against the officer's recommendations. So, Councillor Mrs Green.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, I appreciate that it, according to all the rules and regulations, there isn't really anything, bearing in mind the development rules where they've been building. There's nothing potentially that they've strayed away from the plans, if you know what I mean. But I think we've got to consider a couple of points. First, I was very concerned in hearing that it's planning for access from Centurion Way. Potentially, that could mean traffic being led off Junction 28, trundling through Leyland and up Farrington. Like, we get a lot of vehicles now, HGVs, that are accessing Leyland that way, and it's been a bane of life for people for years about this. They should be guided off at 29, and there's no reason why they need to come down Stanleyfield Lane affecting Farrington. They could go over the road and in through the business park entrance, I don't know what you call it there, from the other end. It could come in that way and come in to access that plan at that point. So it doesn't really need to come up Stanleyfield Lane and affect Farrington. So I think that needs some guidance with highways, and the developers need to look at all that. The other thing as well I'm concerned about, they can say it's a fair distance away from the building, from people's houses, etc., etc. There won't be any shadowing, blah, de blah. But I think we've got to consider the quality of life of the residents. And yes, when they moved into the house, they knew it was going to be an industrial area. They knew something would be built on there. But I think we need to make it as comfortable and pleasant for those residents living there as possible. And if you've got a building that's very bland, just stuck there in your eyesight, it's not a pleasant place. So I think we need to impact as many conditions as we can to make this development better for the residents. So I've got concerns about the residents, and I've got concerns about the travel access of vehicles. Thank you.
Okay, I'll just point out that access has already been approved in the outline conditions.
But then, so that definitely be led up St Hewin Way then.
Councillor Green, just let me bring Councillor. Just let me bring Chris Sowersby in, and then I'll let you come back. All right.
Yeah, thank you. I was just about to pick on that exact point that Councillor Williams and Councillor Green have referenced. For item 6, this is a reserved matters application. So the principle of development and the matter of access has already been approved for this one. The only matters for consideration on item 6. Is that any better?
Yeah, can we have less? Listen, we're trying to be nice. We're trying to help you. Please don't. Please. Can you hear me? Chris, would you move closer to your microphone, please?
I think it's just turned at the volume now. So for item 6, the only matters that are being considered are the appearance of the proposal, the landscaping, the layouts and the scale. For item 7, that is a full application where all matters are on the table. So for item 6, it wouldn't be possible to refuse it on highway grounds because that matter has already been approved as part of the outline permission. That's all. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks for pointing that out, Chris. Mrs. Green, sorry, Councillor Mary Green, would you like to come back?
It's fine, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Ange Turner.
Thank you, Chair. I'm quite staggered really about this, about the size of the buildings actually. I think they are overbearing, and I don't see how the justification of the trees being planted with the grading scales that we've been offered will actually mitigate this. I mean, I saw the picture before of the proximity of these buildings to the residential properties, and find that quite shocking, actually. It's too big and it's too close to residential properties that exist there already. Okay, you've talked about, Chris, I think you said about the access has already been agreed at phase 1. Once again, from my past experience of planning applications, I'm consistently disappointed with LCC Highways, with their responses. You know, I don't know, can I say this? I don't think that department's fit for purpose, actually, because they never have a problem with anything. And this transport plan that was mentioned by the gentleman, 750 pages of modelling, no doubt it's been cut and paste from another transport plan that's been done. And the fact that it totally omitted the use of, or the impact of HGVs, is that right? Is really disappointing to hear. So that's my opinions. Thank you.
Councillor Smith, did you want to come in? No?
Just not at this stage, Chair.
Right.
Just looking at...
Right. Councillor Turney, were you supporting the proposal or not, or were you just making a statement?
Yeah, for item 6, I want to reject it. So I'm supporting the proposal.
So you're in favour of refusal as well?
Sorry?
So you're in... So you're in favour of refusal as well
For item 6.
for item 6.
Yes,
Thank
I
you.
am. Thank you.
Right, okay. Do we have any other proposals on item 6? Do we have anyone wishing to vote for approval? Councillor Smith?
Yeah, no, not to vote for approval, Chair, but as has already been said, item 6 is totally integrated with item 7 almost. It's difficult to separate the two. I think it's a great pity that the presentation wasn't done completely separately. I think I really do, because referring to item 6 and then referring to odd bits of item 7, we've got to pick those items out as we go along and see which are relevant to each one. I believe it should have been done separately to start with. And we can't talk about highways. I was going to talk about highways, but obviously we can't talk about highways. We'll have to do that on item 7. But I will speak about highways on item 7. All we're looking at, I mean, this has got planning permission to put two buildings on. I think not just access, but access for two buildings. It's just the size, the scale, and the capacity of these buildings that is up for either approval or not at this stage. I mean, I've been down there again today. I know the area pretty well, I have to say. I've been down there several times, spent quite a lot of time down there today. It looks as though there's some things are coming forward, and certainly the planting scheme, although it is a long-term planted scheme, there are some fairly decent-sized trees already planted in advance of anything that might get built, and that obviously will change over a period of time. But if the feeling is that the size and scale, and these are too close to the houses, and they are fairly close. I mean, as I say, I've been down there again today. I would also support a refusal, Chair, on this one.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Smith. Did you get stuck in the temporary three-way traffic lights as well?
I did, Chair. Three-way traffic lights, yeah. Yeah, unnecessary.
Temporary. Anyway, just a minute, I'm getting advice from Taz. Councillor Williams, well, he's proposed. Are you going to amend anything about your amendment?
Only safe to say if we're talking about item 6, where we're talking about reasons for refusal, then obviously if I talk about policy G17 for item 6, we'll just do item 6, and then can I reserve the right to speak about item 7 and do a proposal that way and different reasons for that?
You are a newly elected councillor, Councillor Williams. You have every right to speak on any item you wish.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay. So do I have any other proposal? Taz?
Sorry, Chair. Just for clarity purposes, Councillor Williams, I know you obviously made a proposal and it was seconded by Councillor Sharples. Is it all of G17A that you say it's the actual application is contrary to, or is there other specifics that you want to add?
G17 paragraph A basically states about undue overlooking, overshadowing or overbearing. Those are the three O's that I would use.
Thank you, Chair. It's just to ensure that obviously all members are aware of what they're actually voting for and what grounds.
Right, okay, so do we have anybody wanting to propose approval, which was the officer's recommendation? No. Right, so we're voting on an amendment proposed by Councillor Hayden Williams, seconded by Councillor Colin Sharples for refusal for item number 6, which is reserved matters. Okay, can we go to the electronic system, please? Okay, Taz, that's completed. Can you read out the results?
Thank you, Chair. So members have unanimously decided to refuse the application. On grounds outlined in respect of G17A, in respect of overlooking, overshadowing and overbearing effect. And that obviously relates to the reserve matters application. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks for that, Taz. All right, moving on to item number 7, land west of Lancashire Business Park, Centurion Way, Farrington. Once again, I'm going to open the debate up, and I have Councillor Williams again indicating he wants to speak on this one again.
I think there's nothing much more I would want to add, except that I would propose an amendment to refuse, the same as the other item. This one is slightly different in the fact that it's a full application. It's not like a reserve. It's not like a reserve matters. So in this case, we've got the 3 O's: the overshadowing, overbearing, and overlooking. But also, there is no information about travel plan. It's already been stated that the reason this application has come to committee as a full application is the fact that the floor space, apart from for phase 1 and for the units that have just been refused in items 2 and 3, has been exceeded. So any transport plan would in effect be for phase 1, units 2 and unit 3. Therefore, there is no transport plan at all or any analysis into the impact of the additional floor space of unit 4, because there is no travel plan, because this is in excess of what has been approved at the first stage. So I think am I within my rights to say that traffic is an issue with that because there is no travel plan?
All right, who wants to come in on that one? Chris, you were itching to press your button.
I can do. Yes, I mean, with no transport assessments, we don't have the evidence before us to say that there would be a harm, but what we don't have is the information to prove that there wouldn't be harm. So potentially that reason for refusal would be insufficient information has been provided to demonstrate that there would not be a significant or detrimental highway impact. Sorry, I was not close enough again, although.
Right, Councillor Williams.
Yeah, that would be close enough. Obviously, we cannot determine whether there's a traffic impact, and the floor space in effect has already been used up. That's the whole point of this application, as a separate application. It's additional to what has been already approved, and if we can't be proved one way or the other, there's a detriment. How are we supposed to judge it?
Okay, Councillor Sharples, did you intimate you wanted to come in? Yeah,
I'll second that amendment, Chair, please.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's about time this council actually took some positive steps with regard to traffic, particularly with the 582, because we just seem to do nothing. We get approval after approval for thousands of houses on the premise that highways are going to be put in place. We've already decided a long time ago that the infrastructure needs to be put in place. Interestingly enough, Chair, I mean, which is a completely separate application, of course, is an application will be coming to this committee very shortly, I think, with regard to a cricket ground. Well, there'll be thousands of people going to that. I'd love to see a cricket ground. I'm a real cricket fan, but thousands of cars coming down there on a regular basis. We've built housing estates all over the place, and there's absolutely no improvement in traffic. We all get stuck in it. Lostock Hall has become absolutely total gridlock now because people are trying to bypass the double roundabout. And it's about time that we took some separate and independent advice from a highways expert, other than perhaps county council and just take on board what somebody else says. At least challenge it, and I'm sure it will be challenged in a court environment at some stage. But nevertheless, I think we owe it not just to ourselves, we owe it to our residents all over the borough, because we all get stuck in this traffic jam from Preston to Leyland to Double Roundabout to Tank Roundabout to M6. It's just a nightmare, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. So I think we owe it to ourselves and owe it to our residents to actually spend some money on this, and let's have a proper traffic study and a traffic audit done rather than just accept what we're told. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, as I've stated many times, if it was up to me, South River would look after their own highways, wouldn't look at LCC, but we have to. It's just part. Chris, you wanted to come in, didn't you?
Yes, yeah, thank you, Chair. Sorry. When I came in before, I should have just highlighted that obviously we would not have the support of the county council at any subsequent appeal if we did refuse it on highway grounds. Therefore, the council would need to go out and seek other expert advice to support their case for refusal.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, this gentleman's doing his job. He's doing his job. Right, Chris, would you repeat what you just said and put your mouth closer to the microphone before I lose my temper?
Sorry, yes. Right, okay, so the problems with that microphone then. So yes, when I came before, I should have mentioned that at any subsequent appeal, we would not have the support of the county council, county highways, because they've obviously raised no objection. So if members of the committee were minded to refuse it on highways ground, we would need to go seek other expert advice to support the council's case at any subsequent appeal.
Yeah, I was just giving the committee advice. That's all he's doing. Okay. Councillor Smith, were you supporting refusal when you or not?
Yeah, absolutely, Chair, supporting refusal. I think which is in some ways a great shame, because it's already been pointed out that this is a mixed-use site, and it is really, really difficult. When you build houses, you've got to build in jobs as well. No point in building houses if you don't build jobs. What you get is a flat economy that's absolutely doing nothing. And what we've got to do is build the economy. The only way to do that is to build in good quality jobs, and they've got to go somewhere. The right place for them is on an industrial estate. Is this an industrial estate? It is. It is an industrial estate. And it makes it really, really difficult. So it's an industrial estate where the building of the houses, if you go back far enough, was the enabler to build the jobs in that whole area and these various buildings. That was the enabler, because at the time it was seen that you can't just build houses. You've got to build an economy at the same time. And it is an industrial estate. So, it does make life very, very difficult. It doesn't mean to say that these are not too big to be in the position that they're in. And I think maybe we've all agreed that they are a bit too big. So what we're looking at, it will have something on it. There's no doubt. It's got access to it. It's got permission for 2 buildings on there. It will get them. It's already got permission. It's just the G17, whether it's acceptable in a lower form of building or a smaller form of building. And of course, that might not be commercially viable. So there's other things in there, but yeah, I would support refusal, and I would like to add in some things about the highways, because we've all been really concerned about highways for a long time, and maybe we should be not doing our own thing but seeking some other external professional advice as to what is going on with highways. We can't keep building houses and keep building that, and as I say, very shortly we're going to get a cricket pitch coming, aren't we? I'm sure we'd all love to see this nice green cricket pitch there. I certainly would. But the same problem exists. We have a lot of cars, a lot of traffic, and a lot of people coming in. And so that's another decision that the committee, I'm sure, will have to make at some stage. But anyway, there we are, Chair. I think I've said enough on that one. Thank you.
So rather than highways, do you want to use policy G17 as a reason for?
Oh, well, I think it's both. I think G17 was proposed, so I'm just supporting G17 and highways as well, Chair. Thank you.
Councillor Williams, you wanted to come back?
I'd effectively agree what Councillor Smith has said. Yeah, yes, nobody's disputing this is employment land, but it has to be the right for the residents in the right form. This isn't, and this is it contravenes G17 as far as I'm concerned. And as Councillor Smith has already said about the highways aspect, this is additional, and there's just no impact assessment on what additional this would bring.
You do need to bear in mind about the legal position using highways. Yeah. Councillor Unsworth.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm just a bit concerned about the report on air quality. Was that in with the is that included in the effects of traffic?
Janice, have you got anything on air quality?
It was all dealt with at the outline stage for the wider site.
So, I mean, it says there'll be an insignificant effect. I'm just wondering, if that was rolled up in the same, how insignificant really, isn't it? How can we have lorries coming and going and not have that with an insignificant effect?
It's something to do with the proof, isn't it? Well, you haven't got evidence, have you, of air quality damage by additional traffic. You need evidence, don't you, before you actually need the physical evidence in front of you, don't you? Are you going to come back on that?
So you'd need another transport assessment for environmental health to have a look at the air quality. Well, like I say, air quality and transport assessment was dealt with at the outline stage for the whole site.
All right, Councillor Unsworth. Yeah. Okay, well, we've had another proposal for an amendment for refusal by Hayden Williams, seconded by Colin Sharples. Do we have anybody wanting to propose approval for this application? Do we have any members wanting to propose anything else, like a deferral or? Right, okay, I'm going to bring the debate to a close, then I'm going to go to the vote. And ladies and gentlemen, this is for vote for the amendment. Just bear with me, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Chair. Just for clarity, and it's just outlining the reasons so that you're obviously aware of what you're actually voting on. Sorry, Chair. So it's in respect of obviously the parts that were outlined by Councillor Williams was G17A, the overlooking, the overshadowing, the overbearing, and also you mentioned traffic issues, and that it would come under G17C. So the development would not prejudice highway safety. So obviously in this case, you're saying that this development would prejudice highway safety. So it's G17A and C. Okay.
That's correct. Yeah, C, because obviously we cannot assess whether there is any prejudice to highway safety because we've got no evidence.
Thank you.
Thanks for that, Taz. As clear as mud as usual. Right, okay. So the proposal in front of us. This is the amendment for refusal proposed by Councillor Hayden Williams, seconded by Colin Sharples. So let's go to the electronic vote. This is for refusal of item number 7. Okay, Taz.
Thank you, Chair. So committee have decided to refuse the application for erection of a Class B2 B8 use building at land west of Lancashire Business Park for reasons relating to G17A and G17C, i.e. that the development would be contrary to that policy. Thank you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes this evening's planning committee meeting. Hope you all have a safe journey home. All new members, I hope you've enjoyed this evening. This is planning committee light. So get ready for some action next time. All right, thanks very much indeed, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.